Kakalosh Boker Tov, we're continuing on Daf Kuf Gimel Amud Bet, 103b. We are at the Mishnah. The Mishnah says as follows. We're talking about Isurim de Rabbanan, right? Rabbinical prohibitions that were permitted in the Mikdash. So it says over here like this. Kohen shelaka be'etzba'o, korech alea gemei b'mikdash. So if you have a Kohen that he has a wound on his hand, so he's allowed on Shabbat to put on top of the wound, he's allowed to put on this gemi, this like reeds, right, all around. It's like a type of a bandage. Why? Because it's not derech eretz that he should be in the Bet HaMikdash and he's got his wound just walking around like that. So because of that, they permitted it because, again, the same simple concept of en shvu b'mikdash, there's no drabbanans in the Bet HaMikdash, v'lo b'medina, but not in outside of the Bet HaMikdash. Okay, why? Because then they prohibited it because of refuah. Now, im leotzi dam, now if it is that you're putting there purposely, you're putting this bandage around it in order to take out blood, so then kan vekan, whether it's in the Bet HaMikdash or in the Medina, it's going to be asur. Yeah, tightly. You're putting it around, yeah, in order to take out blood. So he says in such a case, right, then it's going to be asur. Why? Because then it's asur min Torah, because taking out blood is obviously asur midoraita, because of a chabura. Okay?
Even though you don't want the blood that's being taken out?
Yes.
Remember, we're getting rid of it because we don't want it, not because we're going to use it for a purpose. There's a little bit of a difference, no?
Yeah, but even with that, I think it's still the Sumina Torah. No, for sure not.
If it's in a hash,
Isur Refuah is Sur on
We
Shabbat.
want to continue. Yesterday, we were very
Siman
fast.
Shin Kafchet. There's an entire
Isn't it
siman.
a fact?
It's a
But
sur.
they express blood from your teeth. Some people allow because
somebody
you don't
got
want the blood to
in
come back
snake,
in.
got bitten.
So let's say you brush
So
your
in
teeth,
the old,
it's
especially
gonna
the
be
owners, you come by the sort of suck it out
It's gonna be
and
forever
spit
with
it out
them
the blood,
anyway.
right?
That's something else.
So
You're talking about no, it's not
Guilty.
Refuah. That's called
I'm
Sakana
guilty.
Nefashot.
Ah.
Fine. Amar Rav Yehuda bered Rav Chia. Says Rav Yehuda bered Rav Chia. Lo shanu, what are we dealing with? It says here ele gemi. We're talking about only a gemi, right? How do you literally translate gemi in English? You say that?
Small belt,
No.
reed grass.
Reed grass, yeah. Reed grass, that's what he says? Reed grass?
Reed grass.
Okay, reed grass. Okay, I said reed. It's okay, reed grass. Fine. Aval tziltzul katan. This is not what he's talking about with a small belt, right? Havi yitur begadim. So then that's just an extra beged, right? Which is actually pasul in the Bet HaMikdash. Which means if I'm going to come and I'm going to add on a clothing onto one of the clothing, right? We know how many clothing did the Kohen have, a regular Kohen?
4.
4. How many did the Kohen Gadol have?
8.
8. Very good. So he says here, if you're going to add on to one of the clothing of the Bigdei Kehuna, that actually disqualifies a Kohen for service in the Bet HaMikdash, in the temple. So therefore, obviously, you cannot have this tziltzul katan, this small belt. Rabbi Yochanan says, no. Lo amru yitur begadim ela bimkom begadim. It's only prohibited to add a clothing in a place of the clothing. Right? Exactly. Aval shelo bimkom begadim. But if it's not on the place of clothing, meaning if I'm going to put something around my finger, that's called using a belt, and then I'm going to tell you I'm adding on to clothing, I'm only allowed to have 4 clothing to serve in the Bet HaMikdash, and now I added on a belt on my finger, so now what? Says Rabbi Yochanan, because I added on my finger, now it's asur? Now I become disqualified because I'm adding on a clothing? Okay? So he says, shelo bimkom begadim, havi yitur begadim. So ask the Gemara, forget about the extra clothing, not extra clothing. It's a chatzitza. What does that mean? We know that the Kohen cannot do any service in the Bet HaMikdash, for example, with gloves or with anything which is making a chatzitza, a separation, right? A pasek, right? Between the human being, yeah, and the flesh and the person, yeah? He's half asleep. What can I do? Baba Chaki, you woke up too early, I see. Fine. So he says like this. Okay. No,
I'm here. I listen.
No, I'm just making sure. Fine. No, I said a pasek.
No, I listen.
Yeah, I said pasek.
I hear.
Okay, very good. Okay.
So what I should.
Okay. So basically,
This is just for the selichot. Pasek for me is just a selichot.
Just a selichot. Okay. Some of us, we have to say selichot every day. Fine. So it says here like this, yeah? It says be small. What does that mean, be small? We're talking about it was on the left hand of the Kohen, right? We know that the Kohen has to do the service with the right hand, not with the left hand. So therefore, if he has a hefsek, if he has this chatzitza, this separation on his left hand, so therefore, what's the problem? There's no there's no chatzitza because he's not doing anything with his left hand. He has to do with his right hand. Or inami, or you could say another hand. So be amin with the right hand. Shelo bimkom avodah. But it's not where you're doing the avodah. For example, it's going to be bekaf hayad. Right? He says, sorry, it's not going to be bekaf hayad. It's going to be gav hayad. It's going to be here. Meaning usually he would need the kaf hayad, which is the palm of the hand, whether it's to help out, whether it's carrying things or picking things up. But for example, here, you don't do any service here. Imagine right now somebody has to put a plaster or a bandage here. He's going to do something there. He's going to carry the blood. He doesn't do anything with this part of the hand. So therefore, he's saying there's no problem with chatzitza because it's on the other part of the hand. So there's no problem. So even if it's going to be on the right hand, there's also not a problem. Opliga de Rava, and this argues on Rava. The Amar Rava Amar Chasta, but says Rava name Chasta, Imkom begadim afilu nima achat chotzetzet. In the place of clothing, so even one thread that comes out of the clothing is considered a chatzitza between the flesh of the kohen and between the bigdei keuna. Okay, because that's also going to be a problem. Shelo bimkom begadim. If it's a place where there's no begadim, then it has to be shalosh al shalosh chotzetzet. Only if it's going to be 3 fingers by 3 fingers, it's going to be a chatzitza. Remember, usually when we speak about fingers, every finger is 2 centimeters. So it's about 6 centimeter squares. Okay, but the etzba is this one. Usually we're going by the etzba gudal. Okay? Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Look in the footnote. It says 2 centimeters according to the Grach Naeh and 2.4 according to Chazonish. So therefore it's 6 by 6. Okay? Chotzetzet. Pachot mishalosh al shalosh, if it's going to be less than 6 by 6, and no chotzetzot, it's not going to be a chatzitza. So therefore there's no problem whatsoever. So if so, Rava holds that if there's an isur of extra clothing, shelo bimkom begadim, obviously he's arguing on Rabbi Yochanan that he says it's only bimkom begadim. So Rava argues also on Rabbi Yehuda, Bereder Rav Chia, that also is going to be osir the tzitzul katan, right, because of extra clothing, because obviously he says that they put it on the finger, and therefore it's obviously not going to have 3 by 3. Saying usually bandages do not have 6 centimeters. You know how much 6 centimeters is? It's a big bandage, yeah? Fine.
No, it's not.
It's not a big bandage.
Centimeter? No.
Centimeters. Richard, usually a regular bandage is 2 centimeters.
I disagree.
The thing, it has to be 6 by 6. I'm not talking about length. I'm talking about width. A regular bandage. You have a regular bandage? We have regular bandages over there. Go get a regular bandage, 2 centimeters. 2 centimeters like this. Correct or not? It's longer. So maybe this way you might have 4, right? Or maybe you might have 6. But this way, it's 2 centimeters. You would have a bandage. Give me your thumb. What year is that there?
6 by 6 like it's a square patch.
This is like the big, big pads.
Okay,
The big, huge, like that. That's what you would have.
Square patch.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So he says.
You have big fingers.
I have big fingers, yeah. Okay.
Compared to me.
Fine, but it's 2 centimeters, so 6 by 6 centimeters. Okay. Now it says that the Rabbi Yochanan v'dai plige. On Rabbi Yochanan for sure he argues, because if you remember, we just explained, right? Because we just said that according to Rabbi Yochanan, it's only going to be bimkom begadim that there's a problem. So if it's not on a place of begadim, there's no problem. So he says that the Rabbi Yochanan v'dai plige, the Rabbi Yehuda ber Chia minami plige. How do you know that he's arguing? So he says shane tzitzul katan bechashiv. It's different than tzitzul katan, which is like a small belt. So he says, why? Because even though it doesn't have 3 by 3, it's chashuv. A beged chashuv. So since it's chashuv, that's why it's going to be important. That's why it's going to be a problem. Okay? So we continue and says again, Alishna Charina, there's another version, Amrila, they said, Amar of Yehuda Bered Rav Chia, says of Yehuda, the son of Rav Chia, Lo shanu ela gemi, we're only talking about a gemi. Aval tziltzul katan chotzetz, but if we're talking about a small belt, it is a chatzitza. Rabbi Yochanan says, Lo chatzitza pachom shalosh. According to Rabbi Yochanan, here he switched the idea. According to this version, Rabbi Yochanan didn't say it's not because of where they put the clothing, but rather because it's not 3 by 3 fingers. Bimkom begadim, right? Aval shelo bimkom begadim. But if it's not going to be in a place of bimkom begadim, right? Kufdaled amud aleph, 104a1 on the top. Shalosh al shalosh chotzetzot. If it's going to be 3 by 3 fingers, it is going to be a chatzitza. Pachom shalosh. If it's going to be less than 3 fingers, and chotzetzot, it's not going to be a chatzitza. That's exactly like Rav Amar Rav Chasta. Okay? So says the Gemara, Lema pliga der Yehuda ber Rav Chia. What? He argues on Yehuda ber Rav Chia. Shane tziltzul katan de chashiv, the same answer. Tziltzul katan is different because since it's a belt, but it's chashuv, it's something very important. And according to Rabbi Yochanan at the Shvin and Gemi, why doesn't he teach us tziltzul katan? So he says, Minta gavor kamashmalan Gemi maseh. He says he's teaching you something derech hagav. Something derech hagav is that these reeds, this reed grass, actually cures a person. And that's why he was actually telling you that. Because many times they used to use these bandages, which actually cured itself. That means nowadays, usually the bandage itself doesn't cure. It just protects from, external infections and things like that, right? But here, right, this actually, exactly. Thank you very much. That's a nice word. It has curative properties. Curative. Okay. Says the Mishnah. Okay. Kuf Daled Amud Aleph, first Mishnah. Yeah. Only Mishnah. Says like this. Bozkin melach al gebe kevesh. Bishvil shelo yachaliku. It says you're allowed to put on salt on top of the mizbeach, right, in order that people should not slip, which means, right, this they do it all the time in Canada because of the snow, right, which means that here, ice?
Yeah, snow and ice, of course. Not in Florida.
Okay. I'm trying to think, where do you live? Yeah, he says here, so they put it on top, right? I remember we used to have it all the time. We used to put on all the ice all the time. We used to put on the salt. Right? There were big granules of salt, mamash, big, huge. Yeah, and they used to put it, and that used to actually make the path clear, so that way people wouldn't slip in the ice, because you're walking in the snow, you're walking in the ice, and it's very, very slippery. Okay, so it says here, so you're allowed to do that on the mizbeach in order that people shouldn't slip because of the megeshamim. So this is even because of rain. Okay, malim bora gola mi bora gadol. You're allowed to fill up water from the bora gola, bora gadol. These were two different bores, two different wells, right, like pits. One in the lishkat, in the leshakot and azara, bora gola and bora gadol.
I don't know what a windlass is. The utensil he's using to take the water.
I didn't get there.
Windlass.
I didn't get there yet.
Yes,
you did.
Yeah.
You just said it. Okay.
No.
I never mind.
Umemalim bora gola and bora gadol bagalgal. Now I just said. Yeah, with a galgal. The galgal is basically, it's like a circle, right, which you tie on the two buckets onto it, and then it helps it that there's not going to be a lot of tircha on Shabbat, right? You ever saw the galgal? It's like a circle,
okay, yeah,
right? So they used to come like this, and they used to bring
like
it up and down.
Thing,
Yeah, that's called the bagalgal.
Got it.
Okay? Umi be'er akir, or a be'er which was known outside of the Mikdash. It was called be'er akir, right? You're allowed to actually fill it up only on Yom Tov, but not on Shabbat. And the Gemara is going to explain what's going on. Okay? So basically, this is where you're actually allowed to fill it up. If we did have the pictures, I would show it to you, but we would have to actually get it. I don't even remember where we have those pictures.
It's not so complicated.
No, but I'm saying just the picture of where it was in the Bet HaMikdash. I don't remember where it is now. Okay, fine. Let's continue. Fine. Says the Gemara. Rami le Rav Ika mi Pashronia le Rava. So Rav Ika ben Pashronia came and he asked from Rava. Tzram we learned on the Mishnah, Boskim el Chagabe Kevesh bishvil shelo yachliku b'mikdash in b'medina lo. You're only allowed to put on the kevesh, on the ramp in the Bet HaMikdash, right, in order that people shouldn't slip, but only in the Bet HaMikdash, but not on the Medina. Meaning we have a contradiction. What happens if all of a sudden you've got water which was raining terribly and it flooded a lot, and now you want to put salt there? So what do? Mevi tevin umeradeba. You put tevin, straw, in the field, and you put it around, and that's how you're going to do that. So even in the Medina, you're allowed to do these things. So you're putting like straw in it, and then all of a sudden it puts it down. So it says the Gemara, Shane tevin. Tevin is different. Delom vatele, but you're not vatel the tevin. That means even after you put it on the ground, since you're not going to be vatel it, right? But it's still fitting for animal food or to make clay with it, or like a cement and things like that. So therefore, since you're not always going to leave it there, so therefore we don't say that it becomes part of the ground, and therefore there's no melechet boneh. It's not like you created something. Okay, so Amale Ravacha Bered Rav Ravashi says Ravacha Bered Rav Ravashi. Hi melech echidami. What are we talking about in the salt? Idim vatle. If you're going to be vatel the melech there, right? That means you're going to leave it there. Kamosifa binyan. You're doing binyan. Yeah. Okay, you could skip the brackets. Fine. V'idilo mevatel. And if you're not going to be vatel it there. It's a chatitza between the legs of the kohanim and the kevesh, and we know that again it's going to be pasul, because remember they have to actually do it barefoot, right? That's what they used to do in the Bet HaMikdash. They wouldn't do it with a chatitza, so here it would become like a chatitza. So says the Gemara, no, we're talking about that they're taking the limbs to the kevesh, to the mizbeach, and that's not considered an avodah. So therefore, since it's not considered an avodah, only an avodah is going to become pasul because of chatitza, but not because of this. So it says the Gemara, Velo. Are you going to tell me that when you bring the limbs to the Mizbeach, it's not considered an avodah? He's going to bring everything to the Mizbeach and he's going to serve it. The Amar More says that's the halochat avadim kevesh. We're talking about taking the evadim to the kevesh, to the ramp. So it says Gemara, Ela, you're right. You're bringing up the wood for the manacha, for the fire, which that's not considered an avodah. Okay, so therefore that's why there's no problem with chatzitza, even though they're going up with it. So that is Rava. Rava expounded. When you have a chatzer that started becoming ruined because of rainwater, so you're allowed to bring the grain and you put it down. The straw, right? And you put it there. Okay, so Amalei of Papa Lerava says of Papa Turava, Tanya, we learned in the Braita, when you're doing this, you're not allowed to do it not with a basket or not with like a type of a box, right? That means basically which is that because it looks like you're doing it like you're doing the weekday. Ela b'shule kupa, but rather with the bottom of the box which is broken in order like to change from that which you do during the weekday. I mean, you have to come and you have to do a shinui. Okay, you have to do something different when you're coming and doing it. So hadarukim Rava amoralai. So then afterwards, Rava came and he put an amurah in front of him. So that way he could say it publicly. He said, whatever I told you before was a mistake. But you should know, this is what they said in the name of Eliezer. When you're doing it, you're not supposed to do it normally, but rather when you do it, you're supposed to do it not with a basket or not with a box, but rather with the bottom part of the box, which so it's not going to be the exact same like you do during the week. Says the Mishnah, right? We're by the two dots, yeah? We're quoting the Mishnah. Malim bi bora gola. So you're allowed to fill up water from the bora gola. Ula ikle be'er Rav Menashe. So Ula came up to the house of Rav Menashe. Ve'ata hu gavra taraf bava. So somebody came and he knocked on the door. Yeah, on Shabbat. Right? That means basically it was like a door knocker. Yeah, Amar, he said, Manhai. Right? Who's this? Itachal gufe de kamachi lele Shabbata. Right? He should be mechalel gufo because he was mechalel Shabbat. That means, what are you doing? You're coming, knocking on the door, and you're making noise, right? What?
Nothing. I withdraw that.
Oh, okay. Objection, Your Honor. Yeah. So he says, Amale Rabba. Rabba comes and he says, Lo asru el akol shel shir. He said, what are you talking about? He said, the only isur is only if you make a shir, if you're making a noise. I mean, if you're making a song. I mean, you know, sometimes they do. You're making a song. That would be a sur. He said, but if you're just coming, what's the problem? You're doing whatever. You're not making a song. What's the problem? Yeah. So he says, Eit ve'abaye. So Abaye comes and he asks the following question on Rabba, Malim bidyofi. You're allowed to pass wine from one barrel to another barrel, bidyofi, which is basically with a shfoferet kifufa. With it's like a, if you want to call it like a, what do you call it?
Siphon tube.
What's it called?
It says here a double tube, but I don't know what a double tube is.
Yeah, I don't know what a siphon tube is.
It's here. It looks like you're using a piece of hose, and you like I used to siphon gas from the you suck on it, and you get gas in your mouth, and I guess just a plain siphon.
Okay, I don't know. The way that it sounds like it's like the shofar, but that it's the open area which is big is on both sides, which means that it's like this, right? And you got like a big on both sides. That's what it sounds like, because it says here b'shoferet kufufa, and it's got like two mouths. Umatifin me'arak, and you're going to pour water from the kli which is called arak. It's a kli matechet. It's a metal utensil which is very, very narrow, and on the bottom you have like holes. So the water only goes down the holes. Only
there's air if there's an air escape.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're pouring a can, and if you don't make an air thing, it won't pour.
Yeah, I don't know. So he says here, why? In order that it does make the kol, right? In order that it does have these sounds coming out for a sick person on Shabbat. Only for a sick person, but ilo. So hey chidami, what's the case? Meaning, when are we permitted now to start making this noise for only for a chole? Lav danim v'kabayeh delitan. He says, isn't it because that he's sleeping and you want to come and you want to wake him up? Yes, you want to wake him up with the drips of water, right? So Shema Mina, so you learn from here, Oludi Kala Asir, is that any type of Ashmat Kol is a sur, even though it's not going to be a shir. Meaning, you wanted to tell me that it's only going to be prohibited if I'm making a song. Here you're not making a song. Here I'm just trying to wake him up. It's like, right, I'm just trying to wake him up. and still it's going to be asur. So says the Gemara, no. The tid v'kabay delenim. He says he's awake, and you want to put him to sleep. The mishtama kikala de zamzume. So it sounds like a call, which is like of pamonim of bells, but it's really very like soft sound. So that's coming to try to put him to sleep. So you see from here that only for a cholet it's permitted to do such thing, but not for a person that's healthy. So it says the Gemara 8 phase. So we're going to ask another question. Imagine right now you're watching over fruits because of the birds, or the pumpkins because of the wild animals. You're allowed to watch like normally on Shabbat. But you're not allowed to come and start clapping your hands or hitting yourself or banging on your feet in order to, just like you do during the weekday. Meaning that sometimes you would come and you start clapping and all of a sudden the birds fly away. So you're not allowed to do that on Shabbat. My time, what's the reasoning? Love the kamoli kala, is it not because you're coming and you're making the sounds? The cholu de kala asin, it's going to be prohibited.
I have, without looking ahead, I have an answer. Because you're not allowed to call an animal. It's like pulling it with a rope. Remember we learned that?
Right.
I don't know if it says that. I'm just guessing.
You're interfering.
No, it was a good analysis. It's a good question.
So he says, Amar Ravacha bar Yaakov, says Ravacha bar Yaakov, Kezerah Shemi told Tzror. He says, no. The reason why the rabbi is prohibited over there is not because you're making sounds, because making sounds without music is okay. It's a Gezerah Shemi told Tzror. It's because maybe you're going to take a small stone and you're going to throw it in order to get rid of the birds. So for when you do that, you're being over on Otzah. That's why it's a sur. Meaning, if I'm going to start permitting you to start doing noise or doing something to get the birds away, I'm going to come and going to say, you know what am I wasting my time with it? Take a stone and throw it. You're going to watch them flying for their lives.
This is a gader, basically.
Yes. It's a gezerah. Yeah. So says the Gemara, Velahada, Rav Yehuda says the name of Rav, Nashima misachako be'egozim. When you have women that they're coming, they're playing with egozim. Right? Obviously, men wouldn't play on these things on Shabbat because it's bitul Torah. But women, right, they're going to come and they're going to be playing, like a type of, backgammon or all these things that they're throwing the walnuts back to each other. Nowadays, we have toys. In the olden days, the walnuts was the toys. So they would play with nuts and things like that. Yeah? Instead of driving other people nuts, they drive, okay, right? So he says, my tama, what is it going to be a sur? Why? My tama was reasoning. Love the kamolid kala is not because they are molid kol, which means because they are actually playing around and making kol, they're making a noise. The chol de kala sin, and any type of noise is going to be a sur. And so the Gemara, no. Maybe it's because they are going to level out holes, right? If not, you're going to say Adam Rav Yehuda. They also play with apples. Yeah, asur. It's also going to be asur. Where's they call there with apples? Right, but they're playing with apples. And the answer is again, because basically in the olden days, since they had dirt floors, many times they could have holes or they could have things. So now if I'm going to start playing on the floor and I'm going to start playing in places, and then all of a sudden there might be a little tiny hole, she would come and she would level it. If she levels it off, it's a problem. Whether it's of choresh, whether it's of boneh, either depends on the house, depends on the field. Okay, fine. Says the Gemara, Tram, we learned in the Mishnah, Malim bora golam bora gadol bagalgal b'Shabbat. You're allowed to fill up from the waters of the well of the Golan or bora gadol with a galgal on Shabbat. B'mikdash in Medina lo, only in the Mikdash, in the Mikdash, but not in the Medina outside. My time, what's the reasoning? It's not because you're making a noise, which means that when you're coming and you're doing this, usually you would hear how do you call this circle, going around, you would hear it going up and down. You would hear the wheel, going up and down. So says Gemara, no. He says the reason why it's going to be prohibited is not because of a shmat kol, but there's a gezerah. Maybe you're going to start filling up water for your garden or for your chubah in order to give it to drink, right? And that's a problem then, right? Why? Because then you're going to be over on zorea. Meaning you can't water the grass or water the thing on Shabbat. So same thing here. Imagine right now you're going to start taking water. You're going to start watering your churba, your gina, your garden.
Why can't you take it to drink?
You could take it to drink, but it's a gezerah that if you're going to start doing this, maybe you're going to start watering your field on Shabbat. Okay? Amim are permitted to come and to use this galgal in mechuza. The Amar, he said, my time, I was reasoning. Why did the rabbis make this gezerah? Maybe you're going to come, you're going to fill it up for your gina and churba, for your ruins or for your garden in order to water it. Hacha, here, lo gina, there's no gina, there's no churba. Yeah, you don't have either or. You don't have the ruins or you don't have the gardens. Right? Kevin the kachaza, but once he saw the ka that it Uvdal Adamubet, 104b, the Kataru Bekitna, that all of a sudden people would use it, the water, in order to for the flax, right, during the weekday. Asalu, so then he prohibited, because obviously then it would be a problem, because if you're going to start soaking the flax in it, so then it's going to be asur because of lishab, because of
Sewing?
no, kneading.
Well,
It says they're sewing?
well, soaking seeds of wheat,
Soaking is
barley, and the
kneading.
like.
Kneading.
Sewing, but the other one, flax, is kneading.
Kneading,
So
exactly.
why did they mention sewing?
I don't know. I only have the
Wheat,
kneading.
barley, and soaking that is sewing.
Right.
All right.
Okay. Next. Mi be'er akid. You're allowed to fill up water from be'er akid. My be'er akid. What is be'er akid? Amar Shmuel says, Bor sheikru alei advarim v'tiru. It's ole bavel that they needed water. So when they wanted to permit the isur of filling up water from this be'er, they brought proofs that the rabbis have proofs that they're permitted to uproot shut dirabanans because of the dochak. So that's why it was called mi be'er akid mlashon kriyah, that they read on it certain things in order to permit it. Okay, so meitvei, so they come and they ask, right? Lo kol haborot tekirot hitiru el hazu bilvad. I thought that they didn't permit all of them; they only permitted this one. V'amart, now if you're going to tell me shikru dvarim aliyah that they came and they read things on it, ma'azu bilvad, what do you mean? Why only this one? Elam Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rather, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says be'er ma'im chayim. It's a be'er ma'im chayim, which basically means that it's like a well that has unlimited
Natural.
waters. Yeah.
It's natural.
Natural well, but it has unlimited waters. She'en memea kalim. Right? Shneimar be'akid ba'id memeha.
Spring water.
Uh-huh. Yes. That's exactly what it is.
So now it says, Gufa lo kol borot tekiru etiru el hazu bilvad. Ushalu b'nei hagola, when b'nei hagola came up, chanu alea, they went by this be'er, and the Nevi'im came and they permitted them to draw it on water on Yom Tov from them. V'lo Nevi'im shebeinehem.
To drag from them?
To draw water.
To draw water from them.
From them, from these wells. V'lo Nevi'im shebeinehem, and it wasn't actually the Nevi'im, ela minhag avotam b'dehem, but they had a minhag to do it. Mishnah. Okay, Mishnah Kuf Dalad Amud Bet, 104b.
Rabbi, can they continue this minhag also in Israel in this case, or the masters?
Only this one. Only this.
So
this
saying they could.
It doesn't say anything different, yeah. But only this one, not every single well. Sheret shenimsa b'mikdash. When you find a dead sheret, a dead creepy crawler in the mikdash, kohen motzio, so the kohen is allowed to take it out even on Shabbat. Now we're not going to suspect for the yisur of muktzeh because again, muktzeh is the rabbanan. How does he take it out? With his belt. Okay, so now even though now he's being mitameh the belt, which a belt is holy, it's better that the belt should become tameh, but not shelo le'ashot et tumah, but not to leave the tumah there in the Bet HaMikdash. Right, so it means that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to minimize time. Okay, these words of Yochanan ben Roka. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Bitzvat shel etz." You have to take it out with like a wooden, like not pliers, but tongs. Thank you. That's the word. Tongs. Shelo le'rabot et tumah, in order not to increase, right, the tumah. Why? Because the avnet would become tameh, and that would be a problem. So he says, but it's better to do that than to come and to use the tongue. Right? Sorry, it's better to use the tongues and not that, because then you're not going to be over on the yisur of being mitamed avnet. So me'echal motzinoto, where are you allowed to take out this creepy collar on Shabbat? Mina echal, from the echal. Remember, the echal is the place in the Bet HaMikdash right before the Kodesh HaKodashim. Mina ulam, or the ulam, which was the
antechamber.
The antechamber in front of the echal. Remember, there was a big building inside of the, already inside of the Azarat Kohanim, further in. So part of that building, the last part of the building was Kodesh HaKodashim. The part in front was the echal, and then you had a longer area like this way, right, which was the ulam. Okay?
Is the ulam antechamber?
Yes. Umiben ha'ulam ve'lemizbeach, and between the ulam and the mizbeach, which was 22 amot, divrei Rabbi Shimon ben Anas. This is the words of Rabbi Shimon ben Anas. Rabbi Kiva says, Kol makom shechayavim al zedono karet, any place where they're going to be tameh, which is going to be chayav if a person goes in, is going to get karet, from there you take it out. Which means, remember, that if a person goes into the Bet HaMikdash when they're tameh, they're chayav karet. Okay? However, though, karet, well, that's what I say. Only the places where if a person would go in, he would become chayav karet, right? But if he did it on accident, then he's only going to be chayav chatat. So he says from there, you're allowed to take out the sheret. Ushar kol mekomot, and all the other places, right? That's what we're saying over here, right? All the other places, whether it's all the lishakot of the zara or whatever it is. So then, kofim alav pesachtar. So then you're only allowed to just put on a utensil on it until Motzei Shabbat, and then you take it out. Right?
Shabbat, yeah.
Okay. Rabbi Shimon says, "Makom she'etilu lecha chachamim mishelcha natnu lecha." right? What does that mean? A place where the Chachamim permitted the Yisur of Shabbat, they didn't permit the entire Yikar of the Eter, right? The entire Yikar of the Yisur, but rather, right, Mi'ikar Adin, it was supposed to be Mutar, right? And Shelo Yitiru Lecha, wherever they did not permit you, right, is only because of Shvut. Shelo Yitiru Lecha la Shvut, right? That's why. That means basically they only permitted things of the Rabbanan, not things which are Doraita. Okay, we're going to continue. Says the Gemara. Amar of Tevi Bakis Amar Shmuel. Says of Tevi Bakis Amar Shmuel. Hamachnis temeh sheretz lamigdash. If somebody is going to go and bring in a utensil, which is tameh sheretz, in the Bet HaMikdash, he's going to be chayav. Okay, sheretz atzmo. But if he brings the bag itself, he's going to be patur. My tama, what's the reasoning? Amakar says in the pasuk, mizachar nekevat teshalechu. You have to send out from male to female. So mi sheyesh le'tara b'mikveh, only somebody that has tara in a mikveh is going to be a problem. That's a sheretz. It comes to exclude a sheretz, she'en lo tara, that you cannot purify a sheretz in the mikveh. So for only a utensil that became tameh sheretz, if you brought it into the Bet Mikdash, you're going to be chayav. But if it's going to be the sheretz itself, you're going to be patur. So lema miseh lema zachar nekavat teshalechu pra lekli cheres. So why don't we just say that this is actually a proof to that which we learned, right? In that Shmuel taught in the Braita, that when it says, when it says mizachar nekavat teshalechu, it's come to exclude kli cheres. These are words of Yosef Galilei. My time, what's the reasoning? Lam mishum is not because there's no tara b'mikveh. Says the Gemara, no. Only somebody that becomes an avatuma, for example, zachar and nekeva, then they become an avatuma. Okay? And the kli cheres can never become an avatuma.
The earthenware has to be destroyed. It can't be an avatuma, can it?
No, that's what we're saying. It's not an avatuma.
Say no.
It says here, kelim become avatuma in two different ways. And in both ways, the kli cheres does not become an avatuma. Midras azav or tmemet.
Kalim, they're talking about copper and metal.
No, here we're talking about earthenware.
We're talking earthware.
Kli cheres is
Earthenware, you have to go inside of it.
Yeah, very good, very good. Earthenware. So it says the Gemara, why don't we just say it's machlokes tanaim? Sheretz sheninsa b'mikdash. When you have a creepy crawler or a bug that was found in the mikdash, Kohen motzia b'm, so the Kohen is going to take it out with his belt. Shelo l'shot tumah, because we don't want him to stay there with the tumah. These words of Yochanan Bruka. Rabbi Yehuda says b'tzvat shel etz, with the wooden tongues, motzio shelo l'rabot tumah, not to have more tumah, because now you're also making the belt tameh if you're going to use the belt. We're not talking about that this is what the machloket is. The one that says not to leave it there. Is going to be chayav, and according to the man that says not to leave it there, which means the machlish sheretz b'mikdash is going to be patur. So says the Gemara, lo, the chule alma, according to everybody, if somebody is going to bring in a sheretz b'mikdash, they're going to be chayav. What is machloket between them? More savar shir tamuadif, more savar apushet tamuadif. One of them says that if you're going to leave it there, is going to be better, which means it's better to leave it there than in order to be metameh the avnet. And the other mandama, he says no, it's better to be metameh the avnet than to stay there longer. That means basically what's worse, to increase the time of the tumah being there, or to increase what becomes tameh? That's the question.
Yeah,
that's a machlokes.
Perspectives, but it's hard to understand that they all agree.
I would understand that it's only the kalim. That is the
kelim you're becoming tareh. 24.
I would understand that. I don't know.
Okay, it could be, but this is the doubt in the Gemara, machloka between them.
You know.
No, but you could also hear the other time around also as well, which is basically you have to remember that at the end of the day, here, the more that the tumah is there, the more that it becomes impure. So sometimes it might be better that even if you're making something else impure, but fine, but the
idea that they're trying to prove here, that they're trying to put is like not to increase more instrument, more kelim.
Spread it. You spread it to more stuff.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Okay.
But he also says it's that.
I understand, Rick.
Yeah, Ela Kehani tonight, but it's like this tonight. It's not as we learned in the Mishnah. Mehechan motzin from where do you take it out? My love is not the machloket. The mandamar me'azara lo. According to mandamar that says you can't take it out of the azara kasa, but he holds machlish magdash patur. They're going to be patur. And according to mandamar that says kula azara, the entire azara you have to take it out. So he holds that you're going to be chayav. And therefore that's what we're saying. So says Rabbi Yochanan Kufei Amud Aleph, says Rabbi Yochanan ushnehem mikra echad darshu. They both learned it from the same pasuk.
For Sunday.
Bezat Hashem.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. It's been a pleasure.
Everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rav.
Shabbat
Hazak
shalom.
Baruch.